Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock the potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another amazing guest. On this show, we interview some of the biggest celebrities, entrepreneurs, multimillionaires, athletes, performers, and artists to find out how they're able to become successful, their journey, how they overcome adversity, challenges, and of course, their keys to success. And our guest today is definitely somebody who's going to add some light to that because he is really good at what he does. He has this amazing career, and his past is absolutely fascinating. In fact, some of the stuff that he's done, I've always had lots of interest in. And in fact, that was one of his dreams, and he achieved that at a very early age, becoming a sports announcer at the age of 14. I mean, at the age of 14, most kids at the age of 14 is thinking, what I'm going to have for dinner or what TV show I'm going to be watching. He's going out there doing sports announcing, which is absolutely incredible. Soon after that, became a broadcaster. And then after that, he built this great global transportation company, very, very successful on that. Today, he helps lots of entrepreneurs become successful, advising them, giving them advice. And of course, he's still doing announcing. He's still doing voiceovers, which is something I'm very, very fascinating in. So without further ado, please welcome award winner, very determined individual, announcer, broadcaster, entrepreneur, Mr. Ken G.
I can hardly wait to meet this guy. Thank you, Fong.
Well, you're living his life.
I am. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for being here. Yeah, let's get right down to it. How did you become who you are? I mean, like you've done so many different things, broadcasting from voiceovers to entrepreneurship. Those are really, really different stuff. How did you get to the point where you are today?
Well, I think it's a lot to do with my childhood. As the youngest of four children of immigrant parents, there wasn't a lot of time to think about a lot of things except ambition and maybe about work, right? Because I remember working for my folks in their corner store when I was a very young child. We all had to contribute, and it wasn't because we wanted to earn an allowance or anything else like that, or that it was actually a job. It was because we all had to chip in, we had to work. So I think part of that entrepreneurial spirit is watching my folks work hard. And when you see reward come after you work, that's something that's ingrained in you at a young age. So as a child, I was always thinking ahead about what are some of the things that I'd like to do? What are some of the interests? What would be really cool to do if I wasn't working for my folks? And I was quite a precocious child. So a bit of a ham, a bit of a performer. And so public speaking was something that really interested me. And actually, it wasn't really of an interest to me until I always share this story because it's a cute story, but really is where it all started. Was I remember being in grade one, being in elementary school, and my teacher asking me if I would MC the Christmas concert. Right? So as a child in grade one, thinking, wow, this is a great opportunity. To do it was pretty scary when I was a kid, but that was something that stayed with me for a long time, that someone had confidence in me and believed in me that it was something that I could do. And I did it despite being really scared. And that's sort of been a common theme in my life about things that I've liked to try. Is that you never know until you try, is what a good friend said to me many years ago. It still holds up today that why not? Why not try something? The worst that can happen is you decide you never want to do it again.
Awesome. Usually when the teacher goes, "Hey, would you like to MC?" and we're at a grade like elementary school level, usually you're the kid that always speaks out loud and needs the teacher to tell you to stop talking in class. Eh?
Well, actually, that's quite the opposite because I'm actually, I think, relatively quiet and not somebody who is an extrovert as far as I'm a gregarious person, but it is a skill, right? Like it is turned on and turned off. So when I need to perform and I need to announce, I'm not scared of the crowds, but would I intentionally want to go into a crowd? Maybe not necessarily. So yeah, it's interesting what we do and how we do it, right? Some people show up for work for 40 years doing things that they don't like, but they turn it
Oh,
on, they turn it off, and they have a skill that they can do. But why not turn that into something that you enjoy doing?
very, very cool. Speaking of elementary stories, I was known as the kid who had masking tape with his name on it.
What? Okay, I need to hear
My
that story. What
my
does that
my
mean?
my grade two teacher would be at the board. He'll be writing, and then he'll just go. He won't even turn around. But here's something as a Fong tape, and there's this big piece of tape that had my name on it with a smiley face, and knowing that okay, I'm gonna get that taped on me if I don't shut up, kind of thing. And probably had the effect where I became very quiet afterwards, and crowds was not my thing until much later in my life. And think, oh, you know what? Public speaking is something I want to do more of. So I had to overcome that once again. But yeah, it's one of those stories I share a lot because I can still see that tape on his desk.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so from there, how did the sports announcer sort of thing become one of your dreams? Like, not many people dream about becoming a sports announcer, but you did that very, very early.
Yeah, I was always fascinated by watching TV. You know, we did a lot of that when we were kids. Watch TV and watch people perform. And like I said, I was a bit of a ham when I was a kid. And, you know, my siblings would encourage me and they'd say, you know, you'd probably be really good at that. You'd probably be good at being a speaker or being on TV or being an announcer or something. And yeah, so as a kid, I used to do some volunteering. I remember volunteering at the local cable station and doing a few things with some kids shows. But really, my big break. This is so funny. I tell this story. My big break was in high school. Right, first day of high school, I went to Jasper Place High, which is Edmonton's largest high school population wise. And I remember on the first day of school and the announcements, they announced that they were looking for a football announcer. And I thought, wow, football announcer. How's this? I'm in school and they're looking for an announcer at school. And so they said, you know, if you're interested, come see Mr. Thresher about this job. He was a gym teacher and go from there. So I remember going to meet with him and he said to me, you're interested in the job? I said, mm-hmm. Well, why do you think you'd be good at it? I don't know, because I think I love sports and I could do it. And he said, well, you know, why don't you come back at the end of the day and we'll talk about it? So, I mean, I could hardly stay focused the rest of the day, right? I was so excited about that. I thought, who else is applying for this? There's going to be so much competition. I went back at the end of the day and I said, well, and he said, well, you really want to do this? I said, yeah. He said, the job is yours. And I was over the moon. I thought, this is great. What a competition. Obviously, he recognizes talent when he sees it. And I said to him, how many people came to talk to you about the job? He said, only you. And that started my career in announcing. And from there, I announced several seasons of high school football. And the great thing about it was a paid gig. I actually got paid to do it,
Oh
which
wow.
was cool. That led to other things where I ended up working for our local school board. In those days, when they had an inter-school athletics department, um, I got to cut class because the manager of that department would get me to leave class, and he and I would go out to all of this high school sports championships around the city and all kinds of sports: basketball, swimming, track and field, wrestling, you name it, I've called it. And I got to do that as a part-time job in high school. So that really, for me, made it clear that that's what I wanted to do. I really enjoyed it. I still love doing it today. That led on to other things, junior football, and then eventually my broadcasting career.
Wow. And that broadcasting career, is that something you applied for, or was there somebody who was at these games and listening to some, oh man, this person has potential, let's get him kind of thing? Like, how did you get into broadcasting then?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, it was always the plan always was to formalize it by going to school. So after my high school announcing career, I did end up going to NAIT, our local college, and enrolled in the radio and television program. Was a graduate of that program and actually graduated a year early because I was eager to get out into the world and prove myself, and which has always kind of been the story of my life, been eager to do things. So I got out and actually landed my first job as a news director of a 50,000 watt AM station in the mountains where nobody could hear you. And it was a great place to make mistakes. And that's how my broadcasting career started. From there, I moved around British Columbia and Alberta, working in news, and then finally I was able to land a job back in my hometown in radio as a radio broadcaster, radio reporter. And those were a lot of fun years. Did that for about 10 years, had a blast. I'd always tell people it was better than real work. You would get to meet influencers, you get to meet politicians, celebrities. It was a great time. It was a lot of fun.
Well, no, during that whole period of time where you go, you know what, I really want to do this announcing thing. It sounds kind of fun, to you actually doing it and doing it for so many years now. Is there something that you go, wow, I did not expect this aspect of it, or this really surprised me?
I think what that's all about, probably, if you ask me that, is the self-realization that you get from achieving a goal, right? I think what I learned from that whole experience was that I could do something that I put my mind to, and I could do something despite the naysayers and despite obstacles. That whole journey for me was really fulfilling, because starting as a child, wanting to do it, going to school and achieving it and making things happen. Mind you, I do have to say I've been very blessed in my life that opportunities have opened up for me. But I was just telling somebody, a friend of mine, a story recently about, my broadcasting career, because while I was in college, I was looking for work, and I did intern eventually with a radio station. But I remember approaching a very prominent broadcaster in Edmonton. Had been around for decades. Everybody knew him. And I was introduced to him. And somebody said to me, I'll introduce you, because maybe, you can get a job at his station. And he was gracious enough to grant me about a half an hour. We sat and we talked for a while about my aspirations. And I was so thrilled to be sitting with this legend in a room talking about my career goals. I thought it was great, until about a week later, I got a letter in the mail from him, very nicely typed, very eloquently written, that, broadcasting probably wasn't going to be for me, and that I should consider another vocation, because in his assessment, I didn't have the talent to be a broadcaster. Wow. So has anybody ever told you that you can't do something?
Well, usually it's like family and friends, but not like a legend.
Well, I think oftentimes family and friends, they do that with good intentions, because they love you and they don't want you to see you disappointed or hurt if you don't succeed at something, right? But to hear from a local legend that that's not something I should be doing, there's two ways you can react to that. You can either cave and internalize that and decide, yeah, they're right. Or you can take that situation, use that as motivation. And for me, that was probably the strongest motivation to go out and make a success of this. So a few years later, I did return to town and landed a gig at a competitor station, and ran into him at an event, and just went up to him, and no hard feelings, went up and said, "Hey, great to see you. I'm back." And that was about the length of the conversation. Sometimes revenge is the best success, right? So
I was wondering why you didn't mention the guy's name until you got to that point. I'm like, oh, that's why. If you don't mind, because that story is very fascinating. I really want to talk about the challenges, adversity that people face, and how do you overcome that kind of stuff. You mentioned that, well, it became your motivation, but if you could share a little bit more in detail, what were specific things that was mentioned that this person said or highlighted that was the reason why this was not meant for you? And then how did you overcome those certain things?
Well, I guess that's those are things that maybe only he'll ever know, because, when I read the letter, it was basically, you don't have the voice to be a broadcaster. Your writing skills are not really up to, the standards we would have at our station. I don't know. That's all I remember, was that it was a very negative letter. So if you ask me what were some of the things, I don't even remember what they were. All I know was it was don't do it. It was not an encouraging letter. So I think, as far as, taking those kinds of things, what I've learned about that is, You have to stay focused on your dreams and your goals. There has to be something big that you're working towards that will keep you motivated to keep going, whether it's personal goals or business goals. You have to have a reason. You have to know why you're doing something. You have to know why you're waking up in the morning, especially for entrepreneurs, right? Because a lot of times there's a lot at risk.
Yep.
You put up a lot of time, maybe it's capital. Knowing why you're doing something, and then always reviewing what are your dreams, what are your goals, and then also revisiting those and readjusting those at times, right? That the dream stays the same, but you always can change your goal or the path that you're using to get there. And that was a path that I took. Wasn't the right path. Wasn't going to go anywhere with that guy. Took another path, right? And it still got me to my goal. So
Do you remember some of those things that you maybe pivoted or adjusted after seeing that? Like, did you find somebody else that you can talk to and bounce ideas off? Did you sign up for other courses that improve your writing? Like, what did you do to improve upon that? Or was it more like, screw you, you have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just gonna keep on going.
well, I think the one thing for myself is that I'm a quiet. I work through things quietly, so I think that when you have this unbridled enthusiasm, sometimes that turns people off.
Mm.
I think sometimes people take that the wrong way, your enthusiasm as being overconfident or maybe being egotistical or boastful. And that's them, that's on them, that's not you, right? So I think for me, what my adjustment was, I decided that, yep, I'm still going to be enthusiastic with myself, but maybe I will keep those kinds of things to myself. So oftentimes I will work quietly towards a goal and then I'll celebrate when I get there. Other things that I guess I adjusted were, yeah, I needed some skills, right? I had not ever worked a day in broadcasting. And so from there, it was enlisting some help. And, as I said earlier, I've been blessed to have some opportunities. I've also been blessed to have some mentors in my life. So at that time, I did seek out some help, and I was really fortunate to have a couple of mentors locally in broadcasting who were also legendary broadcasters, who did not reject me and tell me I was no good. They actually welcomed me with open arms and said, you know what? Okay, we need to get you to a point where, yeah, you will be a broadcaster. So kind of tone it down a little bit and come on in and see us. And I still am friends today, with my one mentor who is still very active in media in Edmonton, and he helped me a lot. So
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Um, I work with some international clients and people who come in who are afraid of speaking. And one of the most common things that they bring up is my accent. English isn't my first language. I'm afraid that people won't understand me. Was an accent an issue for you, or how about this? If people come up to you and goes, "I'm afraid I have an accent. What can I do?" Well, how would you answer
yeah, that's a good question. I think our world has changed an awful lot since I grew up, and I think we live in a world that is a lot more accepting in a lot of ways as far as differences go. I think what people look for and what people really appreciate is what comes from the heart. I don't think the accent. Yeah, if you're a broadcaster and you're reading the news, of course you want to be clear, but whether that's because you have an accent or because there's a speech impediment, if you're working through some things and you're clear, I don't think that's an issue. But I think that people oftentimes are pretty hard on themselves and pretty critical about things like accents. And I do hear that. I do hear that from entrepreneurs that come to us and say, hey, I want to sound like I don't have an accent. And I think sometimes that's a mistake. I think sometimes that's part of the charm in being a communicator is being different from everybody else. But I think that if your message is solid, people will take more of an interest in what your message is rather than how you deliver it in terms of things like accents.
Mhm. Totally agree. I got one of my examples with my clients is like, I know a lot of engineers who are very, very passionate, very confident about what they do, but their accent is so heavy that really you can't understand some of the stuff that they say, but man, are they confident. They will tell you until there's no tomorrow, but they're confident. So the confidence does not relate to the accent. It's really your message and how sure you are about the stuff that you have to say. Now, the second thing that most people bring up is I'm afraid to speak in front of people. I'm afraid to be on camera. I'm afraid to stand up in front of an audience. How do you face that fear? For you at a very young age, you're okay with standing up in front of people and talking. There's some nerves there. So how did you overcome those nerves?
Well, maybe do it a few thousand times, and you won't. It's like anything, right? It's like any kind of skill that you would have in a job or a career. The more times you do it, and you can do it in your sleep. I mean, I still get nervous at times for big events that I'm doing, especially live announcing. That's can be a very nerve-wracking thing. But uh, as I said to somebody a couple of weeks ago, when you're announcing, you zone out. When you're speaking, you zone out. You probably know this. When you're extremely focused, um, really you don't notice anything on the side. And it's like I guess if you were, I would liken it to being like a surgeon. Man, I could not imagine being a surgeon with somebody's life in their hands and they're under the knife with you. But surgeons, they will have done that so many times that they're not nervous. So I would say that practice, whether it's speaking in front of the mirror or just knowing your content and being confident about what you're speaking of, then nothing else matters, right? When I joke about having done it a few thousand times, I would probably say probably close to 1,000 times I've emceed or hosted something, whether it was through professional associations, or just, these days, if you're on Zoom or you're on Teams, I mean, what better practice is there to be in front of the camera speaking with people, right? And you don't get nervous when you're in front of the Zoom. So why would you be nervous in front of a crowd? And it all becomes, I'm afraid that they're judging me. That's why I'm nervous. I'm going to screw up. Again, if you know your material, you know your content, you're fine.
Mhm. Something else that lots of people are afraid of is screwing up live in front of people. I'm sure for somebody who's been doing this for so many years, there may be some instances that did not go your way. Is there something that you could share where, man, I really butchered that segment, or I did that completely wrong? And then how did you mitigate that and fix that situation up?
Well, okay, so my favorite one that I still get bugged about was when I first started doing horse racing announcing. There was a horse named Ginger Beer, and when you're memorizing names, you've got to memorize maybe 60, 70, 80 names of horses and associated numbers and the way they look. It gets a little confusing at times. And in my first season of announcing, I ended up calling this horse Ginger Beef the whole time for the whole season. And it was probably because I was really hungry at the time I was doing it. And the funny thing is that the owner is a friend of mine, and so we would joke about it, and we still joke about it to this day with some other people. But if I could write a book, it would be about things that I've made mistakes doing. And I don't think that, if you're afraid to fail, you're missing the point, because it's from those experiences that we learn, right? And so never be afraid to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time with things, whether it's announcing or good grief, not being able to remember somebody's name, because I do talk to a few hundred people a week. So it's what helps us develop. And as far as failure or making mistakes, I think we should embrace those opportunities, because again, I think that's where we learn from them.
You mean the owner didn't even call you out on it? Let you do it for a whole year? A whole season of calling the wrong name? Come on.
Yeah, well, that's because he's a great guy.
Uh,
But yeah, I still have people. That was years ago, and I make fun of myself with that, right? I still joke with people about that.
I swear, they probably had bets going on to see how long it goes until you figure it out. You mentioned about the importance of memory. Like you had to memorize so many different names, numbers and whatnot. Is memory something that people can work on that to improve it?
100%. I think in a role, if it's a career or a job, I think repetition helps you remember, right? I think that's really important. But yeah, I do go through a regimen every weekend before a race card that I sit down and I memorize names of horses. Or if it's even at work, right? Memorizing people's names and associating what I know them for, what I'm working with them on. And oftentimes people are surprised because yeah, this is funny for the people that I sometimes I forget their names, but I do remember what we've been working on. And I think it's a really important thing on the other side is leaving an impression, right? I hope that I make it easy for people to remember who I am because of the impression that I leave. And I hope I leave a good impression.
Awesome. Now, you already have a really successful broadcasting announcing career. What made you go, you know what? I'm gonna start another path, another business. What got you into entrepreneurship and then also the transportation business?
Well, I think, as I said, growing up, being in a family where we had to work in the family business, that was something that was the start of being an entrepreneur. And all the time when I was a kid, growing up, I'd always have something I was doing to make money on the side, right? And so whether it was the popcorn sale at school, being the guy who was in charge of doing that, and for fundraisers, there was always something that was on the go. But broadcasting was a lot of fun, and it was a great occupation for a young single guy. But then came something called married life and kids, and as you know, as a young father, it costs a lot of money to have a family. So I began looking for opportunities. And, for me, it was at a point where I was in my broadcasting career. The station I had worked at had changed hands a couple of times in a short 2-year period, and it was not a very stable situation. And at that time, I had started looking at some career options and wondering what exactly could I do? Coming out of broadcasting, there was a couple of options, and one of the options was to be training PR, right? And I did do that for a very short period of time, but really wasn't my bag. So I went around looking for some opportunities. And quite funny is that I actually went to an employment agency and said, here I am. I don't know what I want to do with my life. What can you tell me that I should be doing? Did a personality test with them, and they said, you're an analytical guy. I said, tell me something I don't know. They matched me up. They matched me up in the moving business of all things, right? Here's totally related career field: broadcasting, moving, right? Obviously, that was going to happen. So I ended up working for a moving company, and long story short, I saw that it was a very lucrative industry, and I was working for the corporate office of a very large international moving company at the time, and I said to my vice president one day in the hallway in passing, I said, I've been watching how this moving thing works. I think I can do sales. Here's my second story of lack of confidence. My vice president looked at me and actually chuckled and said, why do you think you can do sales? So I had to go into this big explanation about why I thought I could do sales. And I think I annoyed him so much that he said to me, he said, Ken, he said, here's the deal. He said, the next time we do sales training, a regional sales training seminar, he says, I'm gonna let you come. And if the facilitator after that course recommends that you get into sales, then we'll find you a position in corporate sales. I said, sure. Lo and behold, a couple of months later, national sales comes to town and I attend. I had a blast. It was a lot of fun. And at the end of it, the facilitator came up to me and said, why aren't you in sales? And that's how my corporate sales career. I learned from that experience is that sometimes we think that we have these career paths that we want to go down, but we don't, and we're disappointed if those careers come to an end, but stock of all of the skills that we've acquired over those experiences. and you can probably take those skills and leverage them into doing something else. What does a reporter and a corporate salesperson have in common? A lot. There's a lot of skills that I leveraged from my reporting career. In your reporting career, you're expected to call or meet people that you don't know, ask them for an interview, and to open up and to tell you their story, and maybe even tell you something that's going to give you a great story. And I think sales is much the same, right? You're calling people maybe that you're prospecting that you don't know. You're trying to find out if they're a fit for your product or service, and then trying to close a sale with them. So there were a lot of similarities. So from there, being in corporate sales, an opportunity presented itself to me to open my own business. And about 5, 6, 7 years into my professional sales career, I was able to start a logistics and office moving company. Did work here locally, but also did some work out of country. So yeah, it was extremely rewarding, and it was another one of those journeys where I knew I could do it, was scared to death to start my business, but sometimes situations don't give you the best timing to do it, and that's a story in itself about starting my business.
Mhm. No, lots of people in who own their own business. One of the biggest hurdles that they have is expanding past the local market. For you, you went globally. How did that come about, and what are some of the major challenges that you faced when going global?
Well, I think what it is going global is something that you can do if you've got contacts, right? So having networked at an early age and learning about what networking is all about, I had a number of contacts in place that were, the infrastructure that I needed to be able to go global when the opportunities presented itself. So establishing a network of contacts is really important. My global business came about because of the groundwork I had laid, an infrastructure through meeting people for opportunities for international business that at the time I wasn't prepared to do. But when the opportunity presented itself, my infrastructure, my human network was already there. So it made that transition to do business internationally very easy. So my advice to any entrepreneur is stay focused on what your primary business is, but never discount future opportunities, and always continue to grow those contacts, because one of these days, all of those contacts and opportunities are going to critical mass. And if you've got that infrastructure in place, then you can take your business to places that maybe you never thought it would.
Mhm. Now, one of the things I know about you based on what I've seen, our conversation at this networking event, is your ability to build those relationships, and you shared a few of those relationships that you built that allow you to become successful. Now, how does one maintain good relationships for a long period of time, or at least those contacts for a long period of time, so that when something does come, you're able to reach out and you're going to get the support or the connections that you need, all that kind of stuff, because it can't be one-sided. It's both ways to maintain that relationship. So for you, relationship building is what? How do you do it? What are your keys towards that?
Being somebody who wants to build relationships, it's about taking a genuine interest in people, massive personal development and personal growth. When I at an early age, in my early 20s, I did a lot of self-reflection at that time, because my network wasn't very big, and I thought, what do I need to do to change in order to be a more likable or relatable person? And I went through this massive change where, as I told you, I was an analytical, and I was a pretty abrupt person. And so a lot of personal growth, a lot of books, a lot of tapes, read about people skills, right? And the one that I always still quote from people, I think it was a Zig Ziglar book, that said, imagine people have a sign on their forehead that says, "Make me feel important." Ooh, that was life-changing for me. And do it sincerely, take an interest in people and where they're going, because everybody has a wonderful story to tell if you just ask them, whether it's their family, some of their hobbies, their occupations, their interests. That's part of relationship building, is taking an interest in what people's goals are, because people love to share what they're doing, but they often don't get asked. So maintaining those contacts, taking an interest in people, remembering what they're working on, meeting them, finding out how those goals are going. Are they hitting their goals? What are they achieving these days? What do they like to talk about? Those are really important in maintaining relationships with people and growing, I guess what I would say was trust, right? And that relationship. And relationship building is also about relating to them. So finding ways to relate to them on their level and what they're doing.
Mhm. Now, you said you're a analytical person, so you like numbers, you like systems, you like charts, Excel spreadsheets, and all that kind of stuff. Do you have that kind of system implemented in your relationship building? Like, is there, because relationship building, there could be too much at once, right? Where the person starts to say, hey, you're kind of annoying, stop contacting me. Do you have like a rotation? Okay, every 4 months, I might send a message, or every 6 weeks, I might reach out. What's your system?
Sure. Well, that sounds a little robotic. I think it's a lot of it is on intuition and experience, right? Having worked with people for such a long time, you kind of get a feel for when you should be reaching out to people and when you should be talking to people. And hopefully, if you've maintained a really good relationship with somebody, it's not always on you necessarily to initiate the contact, right? And that's a good feeling when you haven't talked to somebody for a while and they reach out back to you and they want to talk to you because you haven't talked in a long time. So in my mind, though, yeah, I'm definitely a systems guy. I have flowcharts going in my head at all times about I haven't talked to this person in a while, and at this point, I know that I should probably reconnect with them because I remember they told me they were working on this project, and I really want to know how that project is going. So, yeah, I would say so. A mental spreadsheet, a mental flowchart in my head. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. You mentioned it before about having people around you who supported you. Those who said, "Hey, this can be done. You can reach those goals." What's one of the most important sayings or lessons that your mentor's given you?
Oh, wow. That's profound. I mean, if I knew I could write a book. Um, I think that I don't know if it is something that would be something that we could put a hyphen beside and quote it, right? As something that's a profound saying. But I do remember one of my mentors saying to me, if you're deficient in one area, try to get stronger in other areas because those things will make you a more well-rounded package. And that's one thing that's always stuck out to me is that we're not good at 100% of everything. And maybe the thing that we need to be the best at, maybe we're not the best at. But if you can create yourself as a package where you're strong in a lot of areas and not just that one, sometimes that covers for the things that you're not best at, for lack of a better explanation. I think it makes you valuable in a lot more ways than having one skill in one area. I don't know. Does that answer your question?
No, that's good. That's good because like you want to be
Yeah.
rounded in most skills. We can't be perfect, but at least have a little bit of everything so that you can support or work on whatever that comes to you. Now, when it comes to being on the world stage, you getting a mic in front of your face, you get to talk about something that's very, very important, and you want lots of people out there, everybody in the world to remember Ken for. What is that message that you want everybody to remember you for?
Oh, wow. The message that I would want people to remember me for is just try. I think that, we spend too much time in life worrying about what other people think of us, right? And that rules whether how hard we try things because we don't want to fail. We don't want to look bad in front of other people. Honestly, people are so into themselves most of the time that if you make a mistake, they will forget that very quickly because they're thinking about things that are more important to them, their own personal goals and their achievements. So I would say my message to people is never be afraid to try. Um, you know, find out what it is that your passion is and what your dreams and goals are and stay focused on them. And the other thing would be don't let anybody derail you. Don't let situations derail you. If you want to try to do something, go out and try it and try your best at it.
Awesome stuff. This time has gone by very, very fast. There's a lot of other stuff I still haven't touched on, and that's voiceover work, your coaching work, your advising work. But that's probably for another day. But before I let you go, I have 5 quick rapid fire questions to you. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. All right.
Okay.
Stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, no consequence.
Fried chicken.
You are given an opportunity to do a voiceover of any cartoon character. Which would that be?
Fred Flintstone.
You're on a road trip, and for one reason or another, there's one song that goes constantly playing over and over again. What's that one song that you don't mind listening to?
My Sharona.
Quick, who is your who would you like to meet?
Who would I like to meet? Oh my goodness. I'm thinking of people that I haven't met that I have reached out that I've wanted to meet and have met them. That's a good question. Pass. Can we come back to that one?
All right, so this mystery person that you've always wanted to meet reaches out and says, "Hey, let's meet up. I'm going to come to your door in 5 minutes." Okay, what is your night out? How do you build relationships with this person? What do you do for the evening? And what's that special dish that you can cook for them?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I would probably say that somebody that I would want to meet, but I have already met. So I guess it would be somebody coming back would be Wayne Gretzky. I think he's become this icon who, in his time, maybe was recognized but not legendary at the time. And I did get a chance to interview him on the regular as a news reporter. I think I would probably take him out and go golfing because I hear he is a golfer. I'd like to learn some of the lessons that he has learned from his experience and not only being a hockey player but handling his celebrity. And then, from what I hear, pizza is something that that he enjoyed before every game. I think that's what I read. So yeah, it would probably be something very casual, like a fast food kind of meal, like a pizza meal. I don't know. That's a really tough question.
And my last question is, what is success like? But before you answer that question, give me a number from 1 to 5.
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you had to relate success to a fidget spinner, how is success like a fidget spinner?
What's a fidget spinner? Is that one of those things that
Yeah,
just keeps going and going and
yeah.
going? Keep your feet moving. I think that's a really important lesson that I've learned is sometimes you'll be in the dumps about things that you're down about, but as long as you keep your feet moving, just like a fidget spinner never stops going, right? Keep your feet moving. Just keep opportunities. Opportunities will come if you stay active. The moment that you stop moving and you stop doing things, yeah, of course, things stop coming to you, opportunities. So always stay moving, even when you don't feel like it.
Awesome, nicely done. So that's how success is like a fidget spinner. Any final words from you? How do people get in touch with you if they want to know more about you, want to learn more from you? What's the best way?
Sure, you can reach me through the Edmonton Chamber. My email address is kgee@edmontonchamber.com. And, in my role in the chamber, I do have lots of people that already come to me because they want to find out how we can help them with their business. We're interested in talking with you. I'm always interested in hearing stories about people's new businesses, and I've learned a lot of things. Learned there were businesses from things that I had no idea could be businesses. So yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to me on my announcing Instagram page. My announcing page is @AnnouncerKen on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time. I had a lot of fun speaking with you. Like I said, this time has gone by very fast, and I look forward to speaking with you again because I know that you got a lot of stuff to add.
Thanks so much for having me, Fong. It's great.
Great for everybody else. Make sure you connect with Ken. And of course, today is the last day to unlock your peak potential. He's Ken. My name is Fong. We'll see you next time.